Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Writers Chat Tuesday where craft connects community. I am Brandy Bro. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm here with my fellow co-hosts, Norma Poor and Melissa Stroh. Johnny Alexander is off today, and today we are talking about the danger and power of words. And we have a very special guest with us who will share this presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Norma to introduce her. Norma?
Thank you, Brandy. Good morning. Excuse me, got a little scratchy throat this morning. Weather's changing and it's wonderful. But anyway, I would like to tell you, a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. And, and we're going to talk about the danger and power of words. God has given writers a powerful tool to use, our words. Lives are impacted by what we say and what we write. As authors, we have the potential to change the world, reach generations to come, and help a hurting and racially divided nation one word at a time. And let me introduce who's going to share this topic with us. It's a sweet, sweet lady, the first person I met at a writers' conference and was so kind and encouraging. Edwina, it's wonderful to have you back as our guest. Edwina Perkins is the co-director of the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. She is also the coordinator for Mentoring Moments and the manager for Sensitivity Between the Lines. Both of these are part of the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. Edwina is the managing editor for Harambee Press, an imprint of Endgame Press. One of her passions is to address the need for sensitivity and diversity in the publishing industry. Edwina, share with us the danger and power of words.
Well, thank you for that very, very kind introduction. I will say, last time I heard you guys talked about me when I couldn't stay on, and the words that I heard that were shared with me were so encouraging. And that's my heart, is to encourage writers, to strengthen writers in the craft, and just be available. So I am going to share my screen. I think I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I was about to say, you guys better start praying. The danger and power of words. And just like any workshop I teach, I like to start with prayer because we know the enemy doesn't want this to get out. So pray with me. Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for bringing us together, for everyone who's here, or those who are not, but will watch this workshop later. We ask you to bind the enemy and anything he will want to do with technology, and let just join our spirits together. We know that wherever two or three are joined, you are in our midst. So we welcome you. We thank you for your presence. In Jesus' name, I pray with thanksgiving. Amen. So growing up, when I was in about the fourth grade, I started saying, I hate math. Why? All my friends hated math. I hate math. Fourth grade, I hate math. Fifth grade, I hate math. And then I got to the eighth grade and I told, believe it or not, my music teacher, oh, I hate math. And he went, because I'd known him for years. He was very strict. You had to keep your grades up in order to take his class to be, for him to be your instructor. And he went, that's very interesting. Because to my knowledge, you've been a straight A student in math ever since I've known you. I went, oh, so you can continue to hate math, but I just want you to think about it. Well, I started thinking about it, and by the time I hit ninth grade, I acknowledged, I kind of like math. And then I hit high school and realized, no, I really do like math, to the point that I considered majoring in it in college. And a lot of people go, well, how did you get to writing? Well, that's a God thing. But had he not said anything, I probably would have continued hating math, even though it was something God had given me a gift to be good at. We'll tell you another story. There's this teacher, and she had been asked to teach the gifted students for the year. She was excited about it, and when she saw their high IQs, she thought, oh, this is going to be wonderful. She challenged them, she encouraged them, and they rose to the occasion. And by the end of the year, she found out that their IQ levels were actually their locker numbers. But these kids were encouraged to the point that even though they weren't gifted students, they became gifted students. So we need to be aware of what we say. We have the danger and power of words. And one of the first things I like to do is start with the danger, because if we don't know what the danger is, we won't know how to use the power. And we need to be aware of the danger first. So I'm going to share this. No matter what people tell you, words and ideas can change the world. So no matter what people tell you, words and ideas can change the world. So let's look at the danger of words. And we're going to look at words that linger. And the points I want to touch on are words as weapons, tongues as daggers, language as destruction, and conversation as combat. I'm going to say this. I was not a terrible mom. So I'm going to start with that. But when our kids were younger, we have 4 children. And, like any siblings, they had their rivalry and they would kind of poke and pick at each other. But when I would hear them say something that I considered totally unkind or an attack on their siblings, I would say kitchen. And they knew what that meant. Stick out your tongue. I would put hot sauce on their tongue. And they could not pull their tongue back in their mouths until I said so. And I would explain to them, you need to understand that your words can hurt. And you just use words to hurt your sibling. And that's not going to happen in this house. And the tears were starting to come down, not because they were crying about my words, but because it was hot. And I didn't use that little bit of like tobacco sauce. I got hot sauce. And they realized that it could hurt a person, not with just words, but it can hurt them physically. And I wanted them to experience that. Now, what's amazing is of the 4 kids, one really likes hot sauce. And I concluded he must have been the one that had it on his tongue the least. So James 3:5 tells us, so also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest it sets ablaze with such a small fire. And that was the point I was trying to get across to them. Benjamin Franklin stated, a slip of the foot you may soon recover, but a slip of the tongue you may never get over. So words do have the power to wound, and that wound can linger. High school, 9th grade, I thought my best friend was the most beautiful girl ever because she was totally opposite of me. She had strawberry blonde hair. She had freckles all across her face. And she was a size 2 at best. But we were the same height. And one day it just came out of my mouth. I just said, gosh, Sharon, you're beautiful. And she looked at me like I was crazy. So I kind of got in the habit of saying, you're beautiful, because I kind of felt like she needed to realize she really was. Now, that was serious insight for a 15-year-old on my part. But one day she said, I'm going to break with that habit. Okay. Every time you say, you're beautiful to me, I'm going to say, you're ugly. I was like, okay. Well, some of our other friends got in on what was happening, and they started calling me ugly. I went by that nickname for 4 years. And only one time in the 10th grade, we had a student teacher, and she heard it and just reamed the kids in our class. And I thought, what's the big deal? It's a joke. And we even made up a word that they would say, you're so ugly, you're oogly. And again, I would just laugh at it. My senior yearbook, half the people in there would go, hi, ugly, I hope you have, and they would finish what they were saying. When I got married, we had already had a couple of kids. And my husband, one day, I'm getting ready and I'm looking in the mirror, and he came up behind me and just put his chin on my shoulder, and he said, you are beautiful. And I kind of, scoffed, like, you need glasses. And so he saw my expression, and he kind of stood up behind me and he went, I want you to say, I'm beautiful. And I looked in the mirror and went, you're beautiful. He said, no, 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 no. I want you to say, you're beautiful. Again, I looked in the mirror, looked at him and said, you're beautiful. He spent years trying to convince me of that. And when anybody complimented me, in the back of my mind, I would think, you need glasses. Until one day, God reminded me, he doesn't make junk. And in his eyes, I am a beautiful person. And finally, one day, I looked in the mirror and I went, you know what? I am beautiful. But it was 2 decades later, in my late 30s, that I could say that. What started off as a joke impacted me for over 20 years. And there's still some times when someone is really complimenting me, I have to fight that demon and say, I am not ugly. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And I am not going to accept your words, but I'm going to accept the words of the person who just gave me a great compliment. Words hurt, words linger. So let's look at words as weapons. Does anybody know what WMD stands for? It's weapon of mass destruction. It's a device or weapon designed to cause widespread death and destruction. These weapons are typically intended to inflict significant harm on a large scale. Think about our social media, especially during an election year. Darts are thrown, people read your words, thousands of people read your words. And I look at an election year as weapons of mass destruction are being used. Because the problem is, when we vent, when we share what we feel like we should share, we don't imagine that there is a person or another person or people on this other side of those words, because we can't see their faces. When it comes to weapons of mass destruction, and some of the darkest chapters in history have been written not just with deeds, but with words. And the common thread is mistranslation, manipulation, and misinterpretation. Again, that's mistranslation, manipulation, and misinterpretation. Now, here's where a translation goes wrong. One of the most famous mix-ups happened during World War II, when Japan was deciding whether or not to surrender. They used the word mukusatsun in response to the Allies' demand. The Japanese word can mean anything from ignore to withholding comment for now. So it really kind of meant, let us think about it. The Allies interpreted it as rejection with contempt. They're like, oh, wait, you're not going to surrender to us? And it may have influenced the decision to drop the atomic bomb. Mistranslation gone wrong. And I wonder if both sides understood what that really meant, if that would have ended the war differently. Manipulation. This is one of my favorite stories. Otto von Bismarck only took a perfectly polite diplomatic message and did some creative editing before it was released to the newspaper. His version made it sound like the Prussians, I always have to think about that, king had rudely snubbed a French diplomat. The French public was outraged. Politically, they felt like they had to respond strongly. And before one, France and Persia were at war. A little strategic editing literally redrew the map of Europe. Another reason editing is important. Interpretation gone wrong. In the Cuba Missile Crisis, during a tense negotiation in 1962, translations were difficult between Russia and English words nearly escalated to a crisis. So there had to be an exchange of words, like for instance, the word quarantine was chosen instead of blockade, specifically because latter would have been considered an act of war. So it's important to understand how your words are interpreted. And even being careful with how an interpreter translates your words if you're speaking in a different language. Even in everyday life, carelessly used words can wound as deeply as any weapon. So I wanted to start there, and I want to look at now tongues as daggers. Here's what's interesting with tongues of daggers. Daggers were used kind of as a last resort in a battle because it meant getting up close, and it psychologically impacted the person being attacked because they can look into the eyes of the person who's trying to destroy them. So tongues like dagger usually comes from what I would call friendly fire. It's when someone has said something to another person and they get that knee-jerk reaction as a response. It's like, I'm going to put a dagger in you right now. You're looking straight into my eyes, and I may or may not have meant it. And you don't know. So it's, when scripture tells us what I call watch your words, you have to do that because once you speak it, it's out there and you can't pull it back. And when it's someone you know or someone you're close to, or even in an associated relationship with, your tongue can stab them and it causes that psychological damage. Because like when my nickname was ugly, I don't think my friends meant it as a dagger. But that's where it ended up being, because these were my friends. These were people I hung out with every day, and their tongues were dagger to me. So people who, some of the dagger words are, you're worthless, you're a failure, you're a mistake. That can stick in someone's head forever. And they internally become self-doubters. When like I said, we have 4 kids, and the last 2 are twins. Came as a big surprise. And the oldest twin said to me when he was in the 8th grade, he wanted to major in art. And like any good mother, I thought, I hope you're going to be able to eat. But I didn't tell him he couldn't do it. A few weeks before he told me that, I found out he was completely colorblind. Not just a little bit, totally. And when he said he wanted to major in art, I just thought, God, if you've given him this desire, you're going to make it happen. So all through 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, he wanted to major in art. And he had kind of landed on, he wanted to be an interior designer. His 12th grade year, he comes to me and says, I think I'll major in psychology. I was like, where did that come from? And I questioned him a little bit. And I said, okay, you can do that. He lasted 2 years in college. And he came to me and he said, I can't do it. I hang out with the art students. I'm always in the art building. I need to change my major. And my response was, I never asked you to change it from art in the first place. How did that come about? His 12th grade English teacher said to him when she found out he wanted to major in art, you can't do that, you're colorblind. Change the direction that he was going in. Our son graduated with a degree in interior design because we didn't know the school he had chosen to go to wanted students who were colorblind because they had a different perspective on everything. But they couldn't advertise that. They just had to wait till students came. And when they found this out about him, they were so excited. He now has worked as an interior designer for the last 6 years. Loves what he does. This past year, he got the color glasses. Now, he was excited when he saw all the colors, but he wouldn't wear them at work. And I asked him, I said, why do you not wear them at work? He said, because I know how God made me, and I'm seeing the world the way I need to in order to do my job. Tongues as daggers. He trusted this teacher. He trusted his words. And he almost went down the wrong path because of what she said. Language as destruction. Verbal ammunition. It focuses on how words can be stockpiled and fired strategically to wound. We all know someone who remembers our embarrassing stories and insecurities only to use them against us later. It's unsettling how some people collect personal detail to exploit in further conversations. My dad did this to me quite frequently. And when I was a young girl, we had gone to the fair. I loved the fair. I loved the cotton candy. I loved the rides. And on our way out this one particular time, it was the cup game, find where the ball is and, you can make money. So I did that. And because he had said to me, you're not going to make any money. I said, but Dad, just let me try. Well, when I started winning, I was so excited. And Dad let me keep trying. Well, then I started losing. And I was like, I got to make the money back. I got to make the money back. Well, he stopped me when I had lost $10. And I cried the whole way home. And I'm sitting outside on the porch and I'm hearing him tell my mom what happened. For years after that, whenever I wanted to go to the fair, he would say, oh, so you could lose more money? I stopped going to the fair. And to this day, I don't know how long it's been since I've gone to a fair because those words echo in me, those destructive words that even after I apologized over and over and over for this 10-year-old girl, it made such an impact. Be careful also when you use sarcasm. Another friend said, in every sarcastic word, there is truth. Now, there's some you can do that you're just joking around. I mean, literally joking around because it's something that you and the person you're talking to, you get along well enough to do that. And even when I'm being sarcastic, I'm watching how I say it because I don't want it to come back and hurt them. And that's so important. So when you hear, I bet you won't forget this, when you hear someone being sarcastic, are there words that are wounding Or are they just really kind of playing around and joking? Conversation as combat. This is where I really call the knee-jerk reactions. Focusing on how dialogue can be a battlefield of verbal attacks. It explores how dialogue can become a battlefield through relatable examples. The exhaustion after a verbal battle. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you walked away and you thought, wow, I just felt beat up, or I just walked out of that and I don't see the point of whatever happened. Confession. I have had that happen with my husband. And we both walk away and we're like, was it really a battle? Neither one of us are happy. Neither one of us won. And we have to come back and realize this was not meant as a battle. A counselor one time said to me, and I have to admit, I didn't like her after she told me this, but she said, when you're in an argument with David, ask yourself, what's attacking you through him? I was like, what? What's attacking you through him? So one day I call her because we're having a major fight over a vacuum cleaner. I know, over a vacuum cleaner. And I called her and I went, he's doing this and he's doing that. She went, stop. What's attacking you through him? Well, I didn't want to look at it as a spiritual battle. I wanted to look at it as this man's in front of me and I'm going to kill him. She made me stop. And I thought about it and I said, a spirit of stupidity, because I think that's what he's saying, that I'm stupid. So she said, go talk to him. And when I did, he was so angry that a spirit worked through him to attack me that he just was so apologetic, but at the same time, angry at the demon, no longer at me. So conversation can quite frequently turn into combat. And when you find yourself in those situations, you have to ask yourself, is it worth the battle? Because someone will get hurt when conversation is like combat. And sometimes it starts over a disagreement. It could be about weekend plans, but before you know it, it's bringing up something they did months ago. And that's when you're like, wait a minute, what? I want to go to the beach. You want to go to the mountains, but you said 3 months ago I said or did this. With combat, it's planned out. You get ready for the attack. So when it happens, you can attack. So the points here are words as weapons, tongues as daggers, language of destruction, conversation as combat. Notice all of these things that happen in a war. And that's where our tongues can get us in trouble. Danger of words. Now we're not done. Let's look at power of words. They're instruments of transformation. Points I'm going to cover: the life-giving power of language, healing through story, ripple effects of encouragement, and power to create inspiration. Life-giving power of language. Consider the speeches of leaders such as Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., and Winston Churchill. Their words motivated people who were tired. They addressed doubt and encouraged confidence where there was uncertainty. A well-timed comment can influence the direction of a relationship, and supportive remarks may help individuals develop self-confidence. My husband said, "You're beautiful." That started turning around, and it was life-giving power of the language he was sharing with me. If I had not had that relationship or have it with him, I still wonder, at the age of 60 plus, would I still think, oh, you need glasses? Oh, there, you're not right. And would I still struggle with looking in the mirror and seeing who was looking back? Now, writers look to others to be inspired. Make sure who's inspiring you is having a powerful impact on inspiring others. There's something absolutely magical about the moment when someone says exactly what you need to hear. You know the feeling when you're doubting yourself or feeling lost or overwhelmed, and then someone speaks words that somehow breathes life back into your spirit. It's like watching a plant wither, and you give it what it needs, and you watch it straighten up and gain strength and bloom and blossom. And when you water with encouraging words, that's what you're doing to a person's soul. I think if we underestimate how powerful our words really are, then we're not going to encourage but discourage, or just leave someone wondering, what do they do? What's going on? We all have the incredible superpower sitting just there in our mouths, waiting to be used. Every single day, we get countless opportunities to speak life into someone's world. The barista who looks tired, the neighbor struggling with their groceries, and you can help with that. A friend who's been unusually quiet lately. They're all walking around with invisible signs that say, I could use some encouragement. Now, healing through tongues. Examining how positive, affirming words create expanding circles of transformation can extend far beyond the original speaker and listener. I don't know how many of you remember years back when Starbucks had this thing happening where the person paid for the person behind them. And it kept going and it kept going and it kept going. Their words were, I want to pay for their coffee. They didn't know what was going on with that person. They just wanted to pay for their coffee. And it kept going for so long, it made the news because people kept saying, I want to pay for their coffee. There was one story I heard about a person who worked at Starbucks. And they usually ask you your name and they write it down. I can't tell you how many times they butchered mine. But they'll write your name on the cup. This one young lady had gone in for what she thought was her last cup of coffee and just asked for her favorite. The guy wrote on it, you're valuable, knowing nothing about her. And she got the cup and just wept because she was getting ready to go take her own life. Those few words on a coffee cup, you're valuable, healing through what he did. It actually is both life-giving power of language and healing through story. Words build worlds. Storytellers, poets, novelists, playwrights have for centuries crafted entire universities out of language. In literature, the written word allows individuals to transcend time and space. I used to teach in a co-op wherever my kids were, because I did homeschool, believe it or not, for 19 years. But wherever our kids were in a co-op, I would teach there. It's been years. I mean, our oldest is now 36, so it's been years. Not that long before the first time we were getting together, when everything went wrong, I got an email from a student named Jackie. And she was asking me a question about writing, and she put a PS. I recently went through all of my old homeschool notes that were still sitting on the shelf in my parents' room and came across all my life management notes. That was a class I taught. They reminded me of some great times in your class. Well, needless to say, that made my day. I smiled for the rest of the day because through her story, of telling me how it impacted her. Just, it warmed my heart. And I feel like I've already talked about the rippling effects of encouragement because of the coffee example. Have you ever noticed, and I have, when someone encourages you, don't you want to encourage somebody else? It's kind of like a smile. I think of it. Sometimes you can smile at somebody and they'll just kind of slightly smile back. Now, there are countries, if you do that, they're thinking you're up to something, or you're crazy, or they'll automatically say, oh, Westerner. But think of how that smile, just a smile to someone, can change their lives in that moment because you don't know what's going on. We live in a world where a single text message can reach millions of people in a second. This incredible connection means that every one of us, whether we're world leaders or just chatting with a friend, carries real responsibility for how we communicate. Our words have genuine power to make people feel better or worse, to bring communities together or tear them apart, to inspire someone's day or ruin it entirely. The key to handling this responsibility well lies in understanding what we mean to say isn't always what people actually do. What we mean doesn't always mean what people actually hear. And that our words keep making a difference long after we've moved on to other things. There are times when someone says something encouraging to you and you just bask in the glory of that moment. And there are times when someone says something negative to you and you stay in that moment that has caused so much pain. So you also have your intent versus impact, which is what I just mentioned. Remember, sometimes your intent doesn't match your impact. And often you can see it in someone's expression, or there are times when I have gone back to read what I've sent, and the Holy Spirit says that wasn't interpreted the way you meant, and I have to go back to the person. My daughter just had a situation like that. She just took on a role as a assistant principal, not a principal, in a school in New York. And she had a lot going on. And there's a particular teacher that she's not very fond of who sent her a text. Nothing, argumentative in it, but had asked her about something she had committed to do. And she knew she hadn't committed, and she was curt, not just rude, but curt. And later on, she went back and she read her text and she called the teacher. She didn't just send another text. She called the teacher, apologized for how the text probably came across to him. See, if she had gotten a text like that, she would have been fine. But she thought, I don't think he accepts, or understood what I was saying. So they got a chance to talk. And in the discussion, she realized that what he was asking her for in the text, she had already committed to do weeks earlier. So it cleared up a miscommunication. It cleared up what could have been a difficult relationship for the rest of the school year. So sometimes we have to do that. We have to interpret what is being said and see if it's being communicated the way we want it to be. There are a lot of reasons why this happens. People bring their own experiences and emotions to every conversation. Cultural background shapes how we interpret tones and meanings. Sometimes we just are having a bad day and everything sounds worse than it is. So we're writers. So what influence do we have? Somewhere right now, someone is reading a book that's completely changing how they see the world. Maybe it's a novel that's helping them understand their own struggles, or a memoir that's making them feel less alone, or even a simple article that gives them the encouragement to make a life-changing decision. Writers have this extraordinary ability to reach into people's lives and shift something fundamental. I think about the authors who have shaped entire generations. Think of Maya Angelou showing us that we can rise above our circumstances. James Baldwin forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our society. And so many others who cause us to stop, pause, and think because of the words that they've written. You have an opportunity to be that writer. You have the opportunity to help someone or help shape their world and give them words of encouragement. And if nothing else, let them know what they're going through, they're not alone. And it's not just famous people. Think about the bloggers who you read their blogs, who post about anxiety and help you realize you're not broken. The journalist whose investigation exposes something that needs to be changed. The poet whose words perfectly capture what you've been feeling but couldn't express. Even the person who wrote you that encouraging comment on your social media post. They're all wielding the incredible power to influence, comfort, inspire, and heal. Harness the words for good. And what I mean, pause before you speak. Cultivate empathy. Use language to connect. Acknowledge mistakes. Champion inclusive language. I'm just going to mention this, the enduring echo of language. The effects of words do not end the moment they are spoken or written. Like ripples on water, language can set in motion consequences far beyond our immediate horizon. The letter encouragement may inspire a lifetime of achievement. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rabbit trail. In this time and day when you can text, you can email, we have forgotten how to write letters. And if you take the time to write someone a personal letter, it lets them know that you, with your valuable time, have given them part of it. I have a thank you note that my 12th grade English teacher gave me. I have never lost it from move to move. I keep it in a safe place. I have a basket over here when people have handwritten a thank you note to me. Those are words of encouragement. And every now and then I need to pull that basket out because there are times when I don't feel like I'm making a difference. Consider writing someone instead of texting them or sending them a quick email, or even sending the cards that you can send online. If you need to, take the words from the card and put it in a thank you note. But don't forget, when it comes to the enduring echo of language, what you write is almost as powerful as what you say. I want to share a story that brings together the power of words as instruments of transformation. It was World War II, and it was Christmas. And the soldiers, they're on each side of this trench that was called No Man's Land. While they're there, at Christmas Day, one of the English soldiers stepped out of the bunker, and he was just like this. He had his hands raised. And everyone was like, dude, you're going to get killed. And I'm sure the Germans at that point were, do we kill him or what's going on? Another soldier from the German side stepped out, and he had his hands up. and they met in the middle, and the British soldier said, "Would you like a cigarette?" The German soldier accepted it. And what that led to was, for one day, these men came out in no man's land and played a soccer game. They played together, they laughed together, but they knew it was going to have to end. And at the end of that day, they went to their respective sides. And when the Americans or the British raised a flag, they started singing Silent Night. The Germans raised their flag and they started singing it in German. The next day, when they had to fight each other, they couldn't do it. And after that, the Germans and the British didn't like what happened, and they made sure it never happened again. They wanted the men killing each other. So the next time you're about to speak or write something, just remember your words matter. They have the power to uplift someone, to help them see possibilities they haven't considered, or to make them feel valued and understood. In a world that can sometimes feel divided and harsh, choosing words that heal and unite rather than harm and divide is one of the most meaningful contributions we can make. Your words have power. Use them wisely, use them well. The same voice that could tear someone down can absolutely build them up instead. Consider this. Words are a powerful force that can be used to build or destroy, to inspire or harm. Speaking with care, listening with compassion. I want to end with this. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. Winston Churchill. And that bears repeating. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. Let me close in prayer. Father, thank you so much for this time that we've had. Thank you that I pray you used my words to reach an audience that can reach so many more, and that their audience can reach so many more people with their words. We thank you for our time together today. In Jesus' name, I pray with thanksgiving. Amen. I'm back.
That was a
Thank
great presentation.
you so much.
You're welcome.
We had someone in the chat ask, essentially, sometimes it can be hard to change a negative conversation, especially if you maybe are not very good verbally. Do you have suggestions for ways to change a conversation that is negatively impacting you?
One of the ways that when I have conversations like that, I ask the person, is it okay? Can we discuss this later? And you can let them know, I'm kind of just struggling, but you don't even have to say that. Can we discuss this later? When I would say when I can wrap my head around it better, especially if, like, I'm going to go back to political year, when you, oh yeah, Catherine, I agree. When things are being said, and you're right, a lot of times the worst is in the church. And that's one where if the attack you feel like is on you, be careful. If the attack is on someone you know, be careful. If the attack is on another group of people, you don't have to stay silent, because that lets them know you're in agreement. But let them know you'd like to talk about this more at a later date. That gives you an opportunity to, one, pray, and two, ask God for the words. But if they're pushing at you to have this discussion, then is when you can say, I just need to let this go for now. I'll see you later. And walk away.
Good advice.
I like the focus on meaningful questions. To really, it's when you're in the moment, when you're in that confrontational situation, the last thing you really think about is asking a meaningful question that really gets to the heart of the matter. And I think that practicing of the pause and asking those meaningful questions is really a good thing for all of us to get in the practice of.
And I will ask you first, can you explain more why you feel that way or why you're thinking that way? But there are other times when I need that pause so I can come back with questions. Hey, remember when we were talking about this? I was just wondering. And if they're continuing to be negative, keep asking the questions, and you may hit the wall where you just agree to disagree. You can't change their minds, but you have given them something to think about. And when I get questions like that, especially with my heart for ethnic diversity in the publishing house, and I get questions, I won't even give you examples, that inside of me, I just want to raise my hands. It's like, are you serious? But then I'll start asking questions. And sometimes it comes out that there's been a wound or who knows. And then I know what the issue is. But there are other times when I go, I just need to think about what you said, but I would like to carry on the conversation if that's possible. And other times it's like, it's not going to be worth it. And I have told people, I will talk diversity with you. I don't get offended if you want to learn. But I do get offended if all you want to do is argue. And those conversations I won't have. But I want people to have the freedom to approach me with questions that they may think, oh my gosh, if I ask this, people are going to get offended and this and that and the other. I'm a safe place. And I've been asked some crazy questions. But in being able to do that is where you have to set your boundaries. You don't just let the person run over you. And when you know what your boundaries are, like my boundary is, if you just want to argue, end of conversation. If you want to learn, let's keep talking. So you need to set those boundaries.
So I have a question. In the reverse, suppose you are the one that somebody is saying this to, maybe you're the one that is inadvertently causing dissension or negativity. What if somebody says to you, I need to do something different. I can't have this conversation. And of course, you're all up in arms. What is your recommendation, your advice to the person who is being asked to change their conversation, who is being asked to change their words? It can be hard to change around. What would you say to that person who is the one who needs to change?
Like if the words are coming at you from someone else, or your words are reaching someone else?
If your words are reaching someone else and they are negative, or they're not wholesome, or they're hurtful and perhaps you don't realize, or you're just in the middle of a moment and you're hyper focused and you're not seeing the bigger picture, and then somebody stops you and says, this is disruptive for me. That can be hard to receive. What are your words to a person for how to receive that so that you can change, alter, you can stop what you're doing?
If the other person says this is hard for me, at that point, you really do need to back down. I would say when someone says that to you, it's that quick prayer. God, redirect my words, or to that person, okay, let's table this for now. Because when they say to you, your words, that's where you realize you're giving daggers. And if you can get in your mind, you don't want to give the dagger. And you may just have to step back. You may just have to say, can we revisit this? Early in our marriage, my husband and I, he's the come at it. He's the let's solve this, let's do this. And I'm the whoa. And he would push and push and push. And the best advice I ever got from a counselor was to say, I need some time to think. His response needed to be, okay, when can we revisit this conversation? Which meant I couldn't just let it go. So if someone is saying to you, okay, wait a minute, your words are hurting me, then ask, when can we revisit this conversation? Because I'd love to have this talk with you without my words hurting you. So it's humbling when you do that.
Yeah. And and realistically, there are times when perhaps the conversations that we're engaged in and we're pushing something, maybe we just need to drop it. Maybe we shouldn't be having this conversation. Maybe we need to graciously accept the chastisement, so to speak, and say, okay, and let it go and ask God, was I right? Should I have not done that? And self-evaluate before the Lord in humility.
That's good. Self-evaluate. And, someone asked, what if they're not dagger words? It can be words, the way you're using them, they're daggers.
Or tone.
It doesn't have to be, it's the tone. It's all of that. So it's not just a dagger word, isn't just something like that. Like I'm going to use a word and I'm going to strike you, but it's my tone. It's my posture. All of that can be considered daggers.
I might also venture to add that sometimes we can be reactive based on our own personal history. And a person, when they're speaking to us, has a different motivation than our personal experience of somebody that has said something similar or done something similar. And so it's important probably for both sides to self-evaluate and ask, is there a different reason this person is doing this? This looks outwardly the same, this sounds outwardly the same, but what is this motivation?
Mm-hmm. And that's true. And I think it happens more than some of the times. Both sides are not willing to step back, or one side's not willing to step back. It's like, no, we have to finish this now. And it's that boundary, the healthy boundary on your part to either step back because you're feeling attacked or to step back because someone feels like you're attacking them. When the emotions are in it, it changes the perspective. And when the emotions are fully in it on both sides, someone needs to say, let's revisit this. Not let's just forget about it, because that doesn't help. That doesn't solve anything. So sometimes you have to be the one who says, can we revisit this? And they can say yes or no. You've done all you can do by asking to revisit it. And then let go, because they are making their own decision.
Mm-hmm. And all of this is so very important, especially when we have a letter to write or something to present, and we can write something in the heat of our emotions. That cool down period is essential, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Okay, one of the things, I love this story because I thought it was hysterical. There was a speaker who, every now and then, she gets an unkind email. So what she'll do is she'll write it, she'll get all of her emotions out, and then she'll delete it. One time she hit send.
Oh, whoops.
Talk about eating humble pie. But it allowed, and this was someone she knew well, it allowed them to discuss everything. And of course, her friend was furious, but she went back, she apologized. The friend didn't want to have anything to do with her. And she simply said, I really want to revisit this. I think we both, said some things because they did that was not helpful. And it actually strengthened their relationship. But that doesn't always happen. You do what you can do. You apologize. And everyone has a decision. I love this, Rachel. Write angry, edit, prayed up, and don't hit send.
Yes. Yes.
Amazing. Don't hit send.
We used to do a thing when whenever we had to have family conversations about hard topics or behaviors of my children.
Mhm.
And I don't remember where I heard it, but someone said, ask them what they heard you say.
Yes.
And so I started doing that with my children. What did you hear me say? And often it was something way more negative than what I was saying and trying to correct a behavior or an attitude. Because growing up, I heard children in my neighborhood who were belittled in front of everybody. You're just an
Mhm.
idiot, you're stupid, all of that. So I had decided I wasn't going to do that. And I tried very hard not to do that. But I would ask my children, why are you acting like you don't have any sense? But to them, I was asking them, why don't you have any sense?
Mm.
And so I had to find a way to let them, just had to pray and ask God to give me words of how to help them understand that their behavior was very foolish without making them feel that they were a fool.
That's
And
excellent.
so, yeah, it's hard. I didn't do it right all the time, so please don't think that.
No, but
But
that's
it was
excellent.
something that we did. Yeah.
And that's something that my husband and I still do
Mhm.
when we feel like, okay, you're not understanding what I'm saying. And so the question will come out, what are you hearing me say? And sometimes it's totally off the mark, but it's what I heard.
Yeah.
And he'll clarify or I'll clarify. Um, drive through the top. I like that, Pam. And it just, you have to figure out how to communicate
Mm.
that way. And even with our writing, like one of the reasons I like being a sensitivity reader is that people will write things unaware how it's coming across with a different um, community. And it's like you can't quite say that. And when I do reading, I'll explain this is how it's probably gonna come across and consider wording it differently. And I love helping writers do that because they don't know. They'll say something and they just don't know because it's not a part of how they grew up.
Yeah.
But yet they feel the call to write about this marginalized community in some way or other, and they need that help. They need someone to come alongside of them and say, there's a different way to say this.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been a fantastic conversation and education, not just for writing, but for good communication. Um, I hope that you might have a few minutes to stick around a little bit for our after party. So I think there may be a few people who are here present would like to ask a couple of questions. Um, we need to close the recording, but before we do, Melissa, can you share with us what we have for next Tuesday?
Oh, sure. Yes. Next week, we're going to have D.L. Wood come on to talk about how to get Christ into psychological thrillers. So we're going to learn about the Christian version of psychological thrillers and how that works exactly. It's going to be an interesting topic, one we've never really discussed before. So yeah, join us. I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you everybody for coming. If you want to be here with us live, you are welcome to, and you can do that by joining Writers Chat on Facebook. Our group is called Writers Chat Members. And we thank you if you are watching the replay. All of our shows, okay, almost all of our shows, not unplugs and things like that, are on YouTube. We thank you if you're watching the replay. We hope that this has been a help for you, and we will see you next week.